everyone, I am Rebecca from ChemKnits, and it's time to leave no dye behind. Right here I have some dye leftovers in Dharma Acid Dye's Midnight Blue. There is some Twilight Gray, and then I believe our last color, oh funny, that green, that's from the Twilight Gray. But then we also had some Teddy Bear Brown in there. Now I just added some water, and I have a leftover dye bath that we're going to use to add these colors onto some yarn, which may give us something really subtle. But I think it's super interesting because there were some particles left over here, which you can almost see in the cup a little bit. See, there's some little undissolved particles, if I can get the camera to focus. See, there are some undissolved particles at the bottom of the cup. These were sort of left behind in the Twilight Gray that I had measured up before. And in all of the dyes, this little bit of color is the remnant left behind in cups after we use them in another project. But anyway, we're gonna dye some yarn. This dye bath right here in a 4-inch deep full-size catering steam pan started with 24 cups of water and 6 tablespoons of white vinegar. And to it, I just tossed in a dry skein, but oh my gosh, it soaked up water so quick. This is a dry skein of Knit Pick Stroll fingering weight yarn. The yarn is 75% superwash merino wool, 25% nylon. And if you want to learn more about any of the tools, equipment, or dyes, I will have links and affiliate links down in the video description. Now, as for our Twilight Gray dye, that was like almost nothing. I still see some particles in here though. I'll see if I can dissolve that. But here is that Midnight Blue. And I think I'm gonna do something a little bit random like that, because from looking at the dye, the Midnight Blue is the most pigmented of the colors. And so, sort of want it to randomly be on our yarn, and I think we're going to have something that is going to be fairly muted overall, but still nice and fun. Okay, there's that last bit of brown. I have a feeling the brown is going to have a really small impact. I have no idea if this green will stick around. I'm trying to swirl it so that way those particles come in. I see some of them over back there. See them? I have no idea if those will result in some speckles or not. But I think they might, which is kind of random and fun. Sometimes you don't really know what will happen when you leave no dye behind. There's a few more of those little particles left that I just tried to rinse out of the cup. But now, I'm going to want to go ahead and heat this for 30 minutes. This is going to be a very pastel and subtle colorway, and I am fine with that. Sometimes it's fun to play with things that give you more pigment. Other times it's fun to take advantage of what they are and get something nice and subtle. I'm happy that it looks like some of the green is going to stick around, but again, we'll see. And now I'm going to set a timer for 30 minutes, and then we'll come back. For a second, I was like, ooh, we got a big green spot. And then I realized that's the zip tie. Although actually, did the zip tie bleed? Yes, the zip tie bled a little bit. I mean, I chose this one because I was curious, but I see a hint, and I'm not zooming in right now, but I see a hint of green that I think is some transfer from the zip tie. But I chose it for this project because it was a leave no dye behind, but it's good to know. Otherwise, a lot of these colored zip ties, I feel like there's a batch of them that I have where they leak color more than other ones, and one of the more recent batches also breaks, which is a little sad. But with this yarn, I'm mostly seeing the soft blue. Maybe we see some other colors. It's very subtle, but still pretty. I'm gonna set this aside to cool, and then we can wash it. Ooh, and we stained one of these colors. Maybe some of those particles looks like it stained the bottom a little bit. Let's wash this yarn. And unfortunately, the way some of the colors, like the brown and some of the yellows from that Twilight Gray, the way those have come together make the yarn feel almost, I mean, I hate to say dingy because that sounds unappealing, Maybe it seems aged and antique because the base of this isn't as off-white. It's more beige and looks like older linens, but it is still just like a pretty neutral but still multicolored yarn. I'm really not anticipating any bleeding though. I would be floored if we saw some color come out here. Oh my goodness. But we've just washed it with a little bit of dish soap. And I'm rinsing out the soap so that way I can go put this through the spin dryer and hang it up to dry. I have a confession to make. I don't remember what colors I used here. I know that this is a Leave No Dye Behind skein, but because it's been a couple weeks since I dyed it, the details aren't fresh. Because in the meantime, between dyeing this and then waiting for the yarn to dry and doing the conclusions, I filmed 3 nights of Hanukkah episodes. And so during that process, that's a lot of yarn that I'm dyeing and handling and thinking about. And I know that this was something I used to use up some of the dyes that I had collected over the course of the day. But I think some of those yellows came from Twilight. I think I had some blue, some brown, but I think that the Twilight gray, the residuals in the cup gave us those yellows. If I'm wrong, I'll have Editing Rebecca insert a clip here. But sometimes there are pigments that take more time to dissolve. And so then by the time you get around to using them, there could be some residue in a cup that is a color shift. This is something that we've seen with some other colors in the past, how when you dissolve the dye, the colors that you use from the first pours sort of at the top end up feeling different from what's left over at the end. And I think Twilight Gray could be one of those colors. And as evidence for colors taking longer to dissolve, we have some speckles here when I know I was using liquid dyes. I may not remember a lot, but I know I used liquid dyes. I really hate to use the word dingy to describe yarn, mainly because, well, ultimately I hope that you would want to buy yarn from me, right? I'd like you to go over to the ChemKnits Creations Etsy shop and pick up a skein of yarn that's been featured in one of my videos to bring it home. So using adjectives that aren't as flattering isn't something I want to do. But it is a word that comes to mind a little bit because of the pastel, unbright yellows and browns that we have on here. That is a word that I would use to describe it. Ooh, maybe I should find some synonyms. Yeah, the synonyms aren't doing me any favor with drab, dull, dismal, cheerless. This yarn isn't cheerless. I would say that it's neutral, it's earthy. Maybe you could use muddy, but sometimes muddy doesn't feel right. It isn't a bright colorway, it's a muted pastel. And I think that for all that there's a lot of blue and yellow and green, it would work really well as a neutral with a lot of other colors. You would just want to make sure that it's a color that doesn't have a brighter white in there. I think that might not clash, but that might be harder to do. But as long as you have a little bit of a pastel or darker colors, I think that this could pair really well with that. Look at this beauty shot. Please let me know down in the comments what adjectives you would use in place of dingy. I hate to use that, but if you've been doing laundering of white linens and things, and I mean, it's a then you know what I'm talking about. But this was intentional. These colors are intentional. So I'd love vocabulary suggestions down below. But I do think that it is really beautiful. I just don't have a good word to describe it. But anyway, subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a new video. I am Rebecca from ChemKnits, and I'm not good at vocabulary. Thank you so much for watching.